Shantae has been a series I've been meaning to check out for years, but for some reason, I never got around to it. I've recently become a big fan of Metroidvanias, and I've heard plenty of good things about the Shantae games developed by WayForward, though they never piqued my interest enough to actually sit down and play them. That is, until Shantae and the Seven Sirens was released, or fully released last month, and I decided to give it a shot. I hadn't actually intended to review this game, but since I have a bit of a lull in my video schedule, I figured I'd make a quick little video and share what I thought of Shantae's latest adventure. Shantae and the Seven Sirens stars the titular half-genie heroine and her friends heading on vacation to Paradise Island, where Shantae is invited to perform in the Half-Genie Festival with a group of fellow half-genies. However, when the festival begins, the other half-genies mysteriously disappear, and it's up to Shantae to rescue them while also discovering the secret behind the island and the caves that run beneath its surface. Seven Sirens' story is simple, and often not very engaging for two reasons. The first is the writing, which feels very Saturday morning cartoonish, and I get that was the point, but it never really entertained me with the exception of maybe one or two jokes. The second is how the story is presented, with in-game cutscenes using static portraits that are well drawn, but are distractingly static and often unfitting with the character models still present on screen. And the game can't decide whether or not these cutscenes should be fully voiced, have no voices, or have short exclamations from each character, and some people might not mind, but I really hate when games do that. But the story isn't the game's chief focus, and I was most looking forward to seeing what Seven Sirens would offer in the gameplay department. Seven Sirens returns to the formula of the original Shantae with a large interconnected world divided into sub-areas consisting of hallways with platforming challenges and enemies aplenty. You'll understand it immediately if you're familiar with Metroidvanias, and Shantae's map is just large enough to present a grand adventure while still keeping things streamlined. It doesn't take too long to travel across the map, but there are warp rooms to help you get to where you need to go quicker, and of course you'll get upgrades along the way that allow you to explore new areas. When you start, Shantae only has her signature hair whip attack, but you can upgrade it to deal more damage and attack faster by purchasing items you can find in shops. These shops also contain magic items that help Shantae during combat, with my favorite being the Pike Ball that orbits around Shantae and deals continuous damage, which is awesome when you upgrade it to the Scimitar. But Shantae will also learn dances that reveal hidden objects, deal incredible damage, or heal some of your hearts. In addition, Shantae gains access to transformations that let you reach specific locations or provide new ways of attacking. I love dashing around as the Newt and the Octo transformation's multiple jumps, and the Tortoise is a pretty nice bash attack, but the Drill and Frog transformations just exist to open up new parts of the map. Finally, you can pick up monster cards and equip them to grant Shantae buffs and improvements depending on the card. With all these abilities, it might seem like Seven Sirens becomes too easy, and well, it is, but not for that reason. Enemies can take down your health fairly quickly, especially when you're dealing with multiple foes in a small room, but that doesn't mean much when the game gives you so many ways to refill your health. By the end, I was so inundated with health and auto life potions as well as other healing items that I was never in danger of dying. It doesn't help that one of Shantae's dances heals you and that you can extend your health bar by collecting enough heart squids. I only got one game over in my entire playthrough, and that was very early on when I was still getting used to the game. Even for someone like me who doesn't have a lot of skill, Seven Sirens is way too easy because of the abundance of ways to avoid dying. Sure, you could always not use your healing items, but that doesn't erase the fact that the game basically holds your hand, and that's a problem. It also makes the boss fights ridiculously straightforward because all you do is stand in the right spot, tank the boss's attacks, and just go to town on them with your hair and magic. Not that it would make the bosses any better, because with one or two exceptions, they aren't very fun encounters, with predictable attack patterns and in some cases, too much waiting around. The real challenge in Seven Sirens is figuring out where you need to go, because while dying is not an issue, knowing where the next progression point is can be a major headache. The game often does a poor job communicating what your next task is, which means you have to scour the map to find the right NPC to talk to. Seven Sirens doesn't have objective markers and it doesn't really need them, but it could have benefited from at least having a little reminder of your current quest. Without that, I was usually lost between recording sessions remembering what I had to do next, even when talking to all the NPCs. But the game isn't even consistent in this regard because a few of the late game objectives do place markers on the map, which is such a strange and, in all honesty, frustrating change of pace. I don't think that the game was updated to introduce objective markers while I was playing it, so it just seems like WayForward couldn't make up their mind on whether or not they should be included. It leads to Seven Sirens ultimately not feeling rewarding, and the graphics and sound don't do much to alleviate this feeling either. Seven Sirens looks decent enough with some nice colors and well-drawn character portraits, but the visual style is just a bit too simple for my tastes. Shantae goes for a softer, cuter art direction, which is fine, but isn't really visually stunning, and from what I can tell, it doesn't look any better than the previous game, Half Genie Hero. In fact, it actually looks worse. The music is a mixed bag too, because while some songs are catchy, others are just background noise. I think the problem is that the game has 4 composers, which leads to the soundtrack never developing a unique identity, instead consisting of songs that go in wildly different directions. As my introduction to the Shantae series, I can't say I was a fan of Seven Sirens. The core gameplay is enjoyable, and exploring the world can be fun, but it's too confusing and vague with where you need to go, and it's so easy that the journey doesn't feel worth it. It's an alright game, but if you aren't already a Shantae fan, and especially if you enjoy Metroidvanias, Seven Sirens will probably be underwhelming. I guess it could be a good entry point into the genre if you're looking to get into them, but there are so many other games that not only do that much better, but also provide a decent sense of challenge. That said, I wasn't completely turned off from Shantae, and I'd like to give the series another shot, but I hope the other games aren't bogged down by the same problems of Seven Sirens. There's definitely potential here, but Seven Sirens suffers from a lack of polish and solid direction, and while it is competent, if you aren't already a fan of this Half Genie, you could do a lot better elsewhere.
Rise and shine, don't wanna work, I'd rather play. Shake my hips and whip my hair, it's a new day. Magic won't blow